I am very honored to be here to speak with you, as there are some of my personal mentors on this call, as well as people I consider family and friends, and someone very notably, Bart from DOT, who has been a partner with us on working to mitigate some of the homeless camps in our community and how to respectfully but clearly help those persons move to safer locations to be housed. So thank you for this opportunity. From my perspective as Public Health and Social Services Manager, the work that we do encompasses a wide reach. And I know Colonel Averill and former Commissioner Fund have heard that saying about wraparound services. And wraparound services are things that one agency does in conjunction with another agency to uplift a person out of a situation that is harmful or potentially hazardous for them economically, socially, and just community-wide. So wraparound services are something I consider what the Chehalis Basin is attempting to do as an integral part of working to stably house people in our community. So Lewis County particularly has a high rate of persons who are what we call ALICE populations. So that's asset limited, income restrained, and employed. So that ALICE population is a group of people who are really hard workers. They love the community they live in, and they're working. These are hard-working people who are literally one paycheck away from being unstable in their housing situations. So in the flood of December 2007, which I'm sure everyone on this Zoom meeting is very, very familiar with, was extremely impactful to our community. That 5 days of water rushing in created what I like to call a devastating economy of scale. What happened where I live out in PL was there was a family, a senior citizen on a fixed income who owned a single wide that her daughter and family lived in. Both husband and wife had great jobs, worked very hard. The husband's job was very dependent on farm work. When that flood came through, it wiped out that farm and therefore that crop for that next year. Another person affected was a Chehalis rental house, who the person was utilizing DVR services to increase, and that's the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, to increase their earning opportunity. And they were being provided a subsidized housing voucher for that rental house. When the water came up to his windows, it took everything out of his house. No work clothes, no work shoes. It also impacted his ability to get to and from work for nearly 3 weeks. There is also the camp at I-5 exit 77. That has been an off and on camp for persons experiencing homelessness, some local, some what we call transitional. So as that water rose up, those people were forced to immediately move, leaving a lot of waste and different things that no one anticipated nor wanted in the water system. So all three of those different situations were impacted in 2007, and they are still affected now. Resiliency in the discussions around people low income or poverty faced is a really great word, because resiliency, like a rubber band, you stretch it really far, it comes back. But resiliency needs an opportunity to thrive. And those opportunities are provided specifically by strategies and implementations, policies, procedures that you all on this call can make happen. If a renter is not made aware of an opportunity from the landlord, that renter has no idea. So also in Lewis County, we are disproportionately affected by what we call predatory landlords. There are some very small pockets of landlords who rent out what we would consider non-habitable living spaces for persons. And because of their situation, they're not able to just pick up and find another place to rent. First, last, and damage are very expensive. And that finding that rental, as I know on this call is also Frank Corbin, who's on our Veterans Advisory Board, is very well aware of. There's such limited housing, even for vets who have a subsidy in place and have rental assistance and income coming in. To find a place to rent is very difficult with low housing stock. So this information provided by Echo Northwest, and also as the Chehalis Basin strategy is to move forward with projects and plans that will impact everyone in the community, to be even a voice at this table for persons who are low income or homeless is really an honor. So I just am very respectful and glad that we are part of this conversation. And the other persons that were involved with a meeting with Andrea, Cindy, and myself was Vincent Perez, who is the lead at Equity Institute. And that is an agency that works specifically with Spanish-speaking populations to address educational and economical disparities in our community as well as other communities. And then also Keely Maru, who is the Thurston County Homeless Housing Coordinator. So that conversation left all three of us very excited that the Chehalis Basin is talking to us, is asking for clear and concrete information. And when I reached out to Vincent and Keely the other day, they very specifically said, please tell them thank you. And also there is still work to be done, but that work needs to be data driven, and it's not going to be perfect. But as we move forward, we need to be cognizant of those persons who don't have a traditional voice at the table. These really specific considerations that may be ideas and theories, having that perspective of persons who live along the river or in a flood basin who are fixed income, and that is something, again, through the ALICE asset, they're asset limited and employed, versus persons who are fixed income. So these are community members who purchased their houses many decades ago and are now on that fixed income, Social Security, maybe a pension. And when we say pensions, we mean $200 or $300 a month in addition to their Social Security, which might be $1,300. When a senior citizen hits a certain age, their taxes are reduced. Some of the benefits of them serving our community come into fruition. But one thing that doesn't change is they still do have to pay for water, sewer, garbage, depending on where they live. There's other food, things that will eat up that small amount of money very quickly. So when a slight flooding comes in, wipes out the insulation underneath their house, that is something that's going to affect them very, very long term. A person, 65, 70 years old who has lost some of the connection with their community, and that little flood of Jones Creek out, near PL happens, and it floods them, gets their insulation wet. That's several hundred to a couple $1,000s that they don't have. So the idea of providing opportunity so they can be resilient and therefore return to a thriving mentality versus a survive mentality is something very exciting for me as a public health and social service worker, and something I am really open to discussion and also to work with community partners who actually work directly with those populations to be involved with. I'm keeping it very short because the data provided by Eco Northwest paired with, the single white senior in PL, the person who is utilizing DVR services in the camp at I-5, those are specific people and individual stories that were affected in '07 and are still affected now. And something very important I want to pass to you, that my maternal grandfather, Sergeant Major George Nelowai, said to me all the time, and it annoyed me when I was younger, but it is in my heart now that I understand it. And that is that the things you created in the past are meeting you now, and they will be beating you or blessing you later. So that is really something to consider with this really important and actual heavy work that is often, it's not paid. Y'all are volunteering. Some of you are paid to be here, but that is a heavy thing for you to consider as the Chehalis Basin impacts such a wide swath of population. So thank you very much for your time, and I'm open to any questions or ideas or opportunities that you may have for me.
Thanks, Meja. That was really helpful, and it's nice to hear the stories and make it, real for understanding what happens to real people. Are there questions or comments from board members to either Meja's talk or the earlier one? I'll ask one and see if others weigh in. One of the things, Nisha, that we've talked about over time is the fact that there are a considerable number of renters in Centralia and Chehalis specifically, and we've heard from the planning directors, some statistics about that. And one of the, a number of the things that Sarah was talking about that the board is considering in terms of actions, reducing flood damage on current properties can have a pretty significant benefit to property values, which would mean a benefit to the property owner, which in the case of a rental goes to the owner, not to the renter. And potentially with that increase in value, then they might feel like they can increase rents, which would have a negative effect on people that are renting those kinds of homes. And is there a way to try to address that so that the benefit goes to the people living there, not just to the homeowner, and doesn't create the impact on the low-income person that's striving to be, survive basically? So I'm curious if you have thoughts or examples of how you can moderate or prevent that kind of negative impact.
One thing that was discussed with Keely and Vincent was the fact that, yes, if modifications occur to a rental unit, the property value goes up because the assessor says you've made these fantastic improvements, therefore your taxes go up. And so it's not unfair, quote unquote, to say someone's burden goes up, so they need to pass that burden on. What we were really interested in, and we didn't have any information or data on, was that if there are programs in place when funds do go to a homeowner to say raise their house or move back from a shoreline or something like that, that would therefore increase the property value, is there something that could be provided to the renter as a one-time stipend or something to offset that potential lift in the rent? But wholeheartedly, all three of us agreed the biggest thing that could be done is to incentivize non-floodplain building. So to incentivize building in locations that address housing across all funding streams or economic standpoints, that is away from flood zones and that provides that kind of equity. So having really beautiful townhomes built on Jackson Highway in Chehalis, they are lovely. They are great for families and community. They are $1,200 to $1,600 a month for a 2-bedroom. That is not something that these families that might be impacted in Centralia and Chehalis in particular would be able to afford. But the incentivization of building mixed income housing or any type of housing in our community is what all three of us had discussed. And very particularly in Lewis County, the housing stock from a $700,000 home to a rental is almost negative numbers. We looked at some of the numbers and we're just really shocked at how few rentals there are. And to put that in perspective, for us, we recruited a very, very intelligent, awesome employee from the Walla Walla area to come and work for us. She took 3 months to try to find a place to live and said, I'm going to give up and not take the job because I can't find a place to live. This is someone with a very high education, high income, a great renter, quote unquote. There was not a place for her to rent. And finally, at the last minute, she did find a place to rent, ironically, right down the street from us in the St. Helens apartments. But that was really, for us, eye-opening because we'd always been looking at it from the lens of people with perhaps poor credit scores and bad rental histories. But to hear for her, it was difficult to even find. That just spoke to the fact that we need more housing stock, and especially out of floodplains or areas that are going to be environmentally mitigated.